Well, let's come back now, change gear completely, find out what's happening in the world of sports with you, Nandi.
Thank you very much, Jane. Well, disaster has been averted at Cricket South Africa. Cricket SA's leadership held a crisis meeting at the weekend where the Interim Board and the Members' Council agreed on the Memorandum of Incorporation. However, CSA says it will not comment on the matter until the process has run its course. To speak more on this, we're joined by freelance sports journalist Lungani Zama. Good morning to you, Lungani. I mean, it was starting to look like we were never going to get to any kind of agreement. What was your reaction when you saw the joint statement?
Good morning, Nandi. Yeah, look, first of all, I think, as a society, we've been conditioned to such mediocrity that, we're almost celebrating the fact that with financial guns held to their head, there's finally been an agreement. There's finally been, an understanding of common sense that I think a lot of people saw a long time ago that this was the only reasonable way to continue. So the fact that we went to bed late last night before midnight with this press release saying, oh, hallelujah, we shouldn't be celebrating these things. This should have been weeks, months ago. But the first point of call is obviously a crisis has been averted. But this should have happened a long time ago. And the next crisis obviously is who then is the next leadership, because that's part of the problem. You're only as strong as your leadership, and even in this new structure, who are these new directors and what are their motives behind it? Unfortunately, we know that we might just be averting this crisis, but we could be months or weeks away from the next one when that fun fight happens. So I suppose it's cautious optimism, but cricket has definitely taught us in the last 18 months to know better.
Yeah, and it is still early days, like you say, but do you think that the Minister, Nandi Tshabalala, will be a little bit relieved? We know his fears, are they allayed now that we've seen an agreement being reached? We do know that he had to resort to some strict threats and heavy threats in order for them to finally, to come together and make a decision.
Yeah, look, I think relief is the overwhelming sentiment, not just for the Minister. There was letters being sent by staff across cricket concerned about their livelihoods. So relief is the overwhelming emotion this morning, because livelihoods were in danger this Friday if this got gazetted and this was the way forward. People's jobs were in serious danger. And I think if we are allowed to be in dreamland and look at a utopia, we'd say the next batch of directors do away with these inflated fees for sitting and claiming to love the game. If you really love the game, maybe you should donate 50% of your salary to the drastically underpaid women's team that's been performing better than any cricket side in South Africa over the last 2 years. That's maybe the way to go. If you're really serious about cricket and you want to do this for the good of the game, write it down and say, I'm going to donate 50% of my fees to this women's cricket player because she's done well and she's going to inspire the nation. Then we know you're serious, because at the moment, these 400,000 plus director fees, most of the problems stem from the fact that once these fees were inflated, that's when the problem started. Before that, when they were much more reduced, ironically, we didn't have all these governmental issues that we seem to be lurching from crisis to crisis for in the last 2 years.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people will agree with your sentiments, particularly regarding the women's team. But I just want to talk to you, Lungani, about this, because we know that one of the major things that were causing tension was the makeup of the board as well as the chairperson. Do you have any understanding as to what the board might look like now?
Look, the standoff was based around the independent director and an independent majority, which obviously the Members' Council wasn't too happy with, and neither was SASCOP for that matter. So the fact that there's a very vague press release out there to say that we've reached some sort of agreement without giving details, and we're not going to comment for the next 48 hours, tells you that it's a standoff for now that's still not quite done. That makeup will be very interesting, and we can't speculate on that because, the fact that neither party is going to speak for the next 48 hours, or CSA for that matter, tells you that as much as there was an agreement, it probably was an uneasy one. And these are now people saving face because they realize that they're literally dragging the game to death's door.
And of course, Lungani, we didn't want to see, the game of cricket get to a point where it was almost, it was so heavily threatened. Looking ahead to the future, how does one avoid impasses like this, not just in cricket, but in all sports organizations?
I think a lot more transparency, a lot more transparency about all these issues. What happens behind these closed doors is has been part of the problem, because the leaks that come out of these high-profile meetings are very strategically placed out there to certain media at certain times to push certain agendas. We just need more transparency. We live in a world now where everyone lives on a Zoom call with cameras everywhere. If everyone's serving the game and there's so many vested interests in the game, why can't we have a camera and these things can be live streamed so we know exactly who the people who are against these things, when there's supposed to be progress, we can know, we can put names and faces to the people who are obstructing progress for the game. Transparency, if you're there to serve and you're there to do good and you say you love the game that so many millions of South Africans do and want to see a future in, you should have no issue with the manner in which you operate and the causes that you stand up for are scrutinized closer. And, we keep on talking about this body of members' council and this body of interim board. A lot of South Africans whose cricket hopes and dreams were on the line for don't even know the names and the faces of these people. You should be able to. We know who Cyril Ramaphosa is, and he stands up and he stands on a pedestal, whether you agree with him or not, but you know exactly what he looks like, you know what he sounds like. Let's do the same for these people who are serving and getting paid richly to stand up for the game. If you don't have an issue with that, you should be able to stand up to scrutiny and be able to walk down the street and say, this is what I'm doing for the game. So I think if we can get to a point of transparency, then all for it. But at the moment, there's too many hidden faces making huge decisions about the futures of young men and women who are just trying to serve a game that so many love.
Yeah, transparency, definitely the key word there. Thank you so much for your time. That was sports journalist Lungani Zama just joining us to talk about the developments at Cricket South Africa. That's where I leave things for today. It's all yours, Jane.